that awesome introduction. That's awesome. I'm like, who is this guy? I really appreciate you stepping in and taking over this call, working with the system and with serving the community and helping out Ron. It's just awesome to hear you take care of this. So I greatly appreciate it, man. Thanks for the work and thanks for the introduction.
Thank you. It's truly an honor, and it gets me out of my comfort zone. So
yeah, well, that means you're growing, right?
Definitely. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and make you host now.
Perfect. Right on, folks. Welcome to the call. I'm glad everybody's here. So I know that Michael and Christian have really been pushing the 100 person marker. So hopefully you guys can reach out and invite some folks to join the call. We're at about half that right now, which is a little bit lower than I usually have. I think last week we did hit 100, and the week before we were in the 80s to 100. But you know what? A lot of people got a lot going on. There's the regionals that have started, and of course we've got a big event in Utah this week, obviously. So I'm sure people are pushing that event as well. So with that, I'll go ahead and start, you guys. Again, if you want to just continue to invite, I did go ahead and already text my team and let them know about the call, of course, and remind them. But you guys are here. You're here on time, and I appreciate that. So with that, I will get started with my discussion, if you will, for you guys that are here on time, and we will continue to enjoy everybody as they come on board. So I want to remind you guys that we have a chat, or you can unmute yourself. I think I don't have anybody personally muted. Yes, I do. Oops. Cool. I did have everybody mute, but you can unmute yourself by hitting the *6 button, I think. And you can come out on the call, or you can just type in any questions you might have, and we can have a discussion as well. And I think you guys had a great Q&A yesterday with Michael at the end, and even in the beginning, there were some good questions. And so I'm going to elaborate a little bit on what he talked about with some of the questions that are power questions when you're talking to folks. And and we're going to talk about desired outcomes. I like the term desired outcome. And I believe that in any scenario, it's imperative that you have a desired outcome, even in considering your conversations with your prospects. No matter what part of the discussion you're at, whether it's the first cold call back to them, whether it's a warm market or a 3-foot rule conversation, inviting someone to an event, building for an event, right? In that money-making activity. And then also in the follow-up, right? The Thursday night after they have seen the information, as you're going to book them to a 3-way call, a one-on-one follow-up, or the next event, there's going to be a desired outcome from that conversation. And then, of course, ultimately, you want to get in that one-on-one situation where you are, overcoming any objections and moving to asking for the sale, a order entry party, and of course, a funding. So, absolutely, each of those conversations all the way through the end, which is then the beginning, right? The beginning of that person's journey with Renatus starts with the end of your desired outcome, which is enrolling a student and funding the combo. So a desired outcome is simply your perception and your goal, if you will, what you want to accomplish from the conversation. And so, when I talk to someone on a lead for a booking to an event, there's multiple desired outcomes, if you can think about it, in that conversation. Ultimately, number one is going to be getting a commitment to an event, right? With an email address and a last name so that I can register them for the event, right? But in order to make that happen, of course, there has to be another desired outcome that you would reach, which is the desire to find out what is missing, as Michael mentioned yesterday, what level of pain they're at, what they're looking for, and what it is that is troubling them, or what's missing in their ability to do real estate or get involved in real estate or own a business or anything like that. So in order to get some of those desired outcomes to be accomplished in that first conversation. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this with warm market and relate it to actual conversations you have. I'm going to talk about my buddy Alex yesterday that he and I had a conversation about with one of his guests, so that you guys can see it in plain English and kind of experience it firsthand, because I'm guessing that happens a lot. And one of the things that we talk about with this desired outcome is, even when I started this conversation, I said what I want to talk about, right? And so it's interesting, our language, I want, and it's hard to, it's hard to overcome that or rephrase that conversation. I want, when I talk to a lot of my IMAs, and they talk about warm market especially, and they're like, I really want my cousin to be in on this. I really want my mother to see what it is that I'm doing, or, and that is cool when you're sharing something and you're not trying to get something from someone, right? But when we want something and we're trying to get something for someone, no matter, in this case, if it's good for them or not, no matter if we're trying to help them, we still have a self-motivated reason for trying to help them. It's just the way that the business works, right? We help ourselves and then we help others, and vice versa. So if we approach things with what we want, it's a little bit more difficult to get the desired outcome. It's imperative that we discuss, in my opinion, decide rather, or think about what they want, right? What is the WIFM principle? What is in it for them? What's in it for them? Which is what's in it for me, right? WIFM. And so we have to keep that in mind, as that is what they are thinking. And so in order for that to happen, it's really important that we ask a lot of, thank you, I'm glad you agree, right? I appreciate the comments, you guys. It is absolutely important that we are thinking about what we're trying to get to a point where we find out what is in it for them, what they want, and what they need, and what they're missing. And the only way really to do that is through questions. And I love what Michael's questions yesterday were, those power questions about, can you explain that a little more? What do you mean by that? Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or, these general questions, which those enable you to get past a stumbling point, right, in your conversation. But let's go to, let's start out a little bit with some warm market, right? And so I was talking to Alex, and Alex was talking about this buddy of his that he went to college with. And so this buddy of his is in real estate already. And I'm not exactly sure what type of real estate. Alex told me he was in commercial, that he's working with some guys that are also, it sounds like they're building. And I'm not sure if he's an actual investor or if he's working with them or exactly what. And so when I try to clarify that with Alex, he didn't exactly know either. He was trying to explain it. So I think it's really important that we find out that information. So, in his mind, he's thinking, this guy is perfect for this, right? Oh my God, this guy's perfect for Renatus. He needs Renatus. And of course, we all know that is one of the core beliefs. Everybody needs it. But what his thought process is that the guy mentioned, he's seen Alex's post, because I asked this right away. I'm like, Alex, so how did this even come about? How's this conversation start? And he says, well, he saw a couple of my posts, with the property tours. And he mentioned to me that he'd really like to get into single family residences. SFRs, and because it looked simpler, or it was something that he could control or do more of himself, or something along those lines. So I was like, okay, so he's got an interest, right? And he's like, yeah. So and I'm like, well, have you invited him down to the meetings? Where are you at? And so he tells me, he's like, yeah, of course, I've invited him, and he's not able to show up on Thursday. So then I thought maybe I could take you up on, and I always offer my folks on my team and to go ahead and have any private tours if we can't get them to an event for a specific reason. Then and if they're a raw, in my opinion, a raw student, they're ready, willing, and able, and we just need to get them in front of the information, then I'm willing to definitely do a private tour at one of my properties for him. So he's like, hey, maybe we can get this guy, he's kind of qualified at a private tour. I'm like, that's totally fine, but let's figure out what's going on. And so he wasn't able to go to a meeting because he had something going on. And so my conversation with Alex was, what is it that is missing that Renatus can solve for him? And he didn't really have that answer. And I said, so in doing so I'm like, Alex, we've got to get to the point where if we're going to meet with him, I don't want to just meet with him and hang out and get to know each other and network. Like, that's fine. We can have that as the reason, but that's not the reason you want me to go there. And that's not the reason I want to go there. What we want to do is share with him the opportunity. And of course, that's what all of you guys are considering when you're talking with anybody in your conversations about real estate. You ultimately want to invite them to get in front of the information. And so if that's your desired outcome when you're speaking with someone, including your warm market, then it's important that we don't focus on why we want them to see the information or why we think they would be a good fit for Renatus. We want them to tell us why we think they're going to be a good fit for Renatus and why they need to see it. So in order to make that happen, we've got to have those conversations and those questions. And a really good question that I typically ask, and I'll kind of go through an example of talking to someone is, and you've heard, I think you've heard me say this before, but I'll say it again. It can't hurt to always talk about, right? So every week I talk to cold leads, and every week I talk to warm market. So, excuse me, last night I was in the car taking an Uber to the Cubs game, the Diamondbacks game, and the conversation started up, and of course I'm asking him where he works, and I'm every question that I ask is selfishly on purpose, and really isn't because I want to know where this guy works, right? The first thing I talked about was his car. He was driving a Lexus. It was an Uber, higher end Uber, whatever it was. And so he's driving a pretty nice Lexus, and I'm like, hey, what is this? And I knew exactly what it was. So I asked him, I knew the answer to the question. So and he elaborated on the car a little bit and how he got it. And then he's like, I live in Mesa and I work up with a billboard. I'm like, oh, what do you do? And he told me that he's in tech sales. And so I didn't really ask about tech sales because I really don't care about tech sales, right? But naturally people like to talk about what they're talking about. So all of these questions are moving towards where I'm going. And ultimately, in asking these questions in the time frame that we had, I was hoping and I expected that he would be asking me what I do. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I asked enough questions about what it is that he does and his wife and things like that, to where he got to the point where he's like, well, what do you do? And because I kind of steered the conversation towards real estate and driving around, right, as we're going through the neighborhood. And I even talked about my house because I bought one of my flips, right, and we live in it. And so he's like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm into real estate. And he's like, oh, are you commercial or residential? And I'm like, well, it's both. I'm an investor. And so we start talking. And of course, as soon as I say that, he's start talking about a house he bought in 2011, right? And with more questions, he finally came out and said, now I got to think about this real quick. He came out and said, yeah, my wife is working from home. We just had some babies. They had triplets, and she's looking to start a business. And they thought about real estate and how they sold their house from 2011 and made a lot of money because they bought it in a down market and it went up. And he's like, now I want to be able to do that on purpose. And so right there, I had an opening as to how I can solve that problem, right? And so I started to ask a little bit more questions about why he hasn't done any real estate. And, he owns a house that's worth, and this is all conversation and questions, right? So this is a 3-foot rule. So remember when I started this conversation that there was a point that I would get to in this conversation that would get me to this information, right? So each question that I'm asking is a purpose-driven question. Like if you think about it and you're in a car and you're in a conversation or you're at the game, like when I was at the game, the people around me, we were talking about sports and making jokes and having a good time. I never had any desired outcome sitting around anybody to get anybody's information so that I could call them about real estate or Renatus. It wasn't in my game plan. But when I was in Uber, that was my only point, right? I had 10 minutes or so to get to the game and get someone's contact information. And so, and it was a one-on-one conversation. I'm the only dude in the car, and it was clearly an ability. And this guy drove a nice car, worked in tech sales, worked up at the Biltmore, and had a higher end car. So he probably was able. So after this conversation was going, I was able to get the fact that he only owes 60 grand on a house that's worth $500,000. And so he's talking about real estate and how, he's thought about it, and he's like really, isn't in the position that he has money to do a deal or to buy another property. He's like, once I think our house is paid off and we're completely debt free, then I'd get into real estate. And so, and this is coming from a conversation as to, why haven't you gotten into real estate? Because that's the perception, you guys out there. Like we talk about this all the time at the property tours, but you guys on this phone call are so smart and so intelligent and so well-versed in economics, real estate, and finance from the Renatus opportunity. So you guys remember, we have more information than the majority of the American public, right? We have more knowledge when it comes to creating wealth than even some financial planners. And so we're having these conversations, and most people think I've got to have a realtor. I've got to have 20% down or 10% down in order to get a rental property. I don't want to put myself in a position where, I can't afford the rental, and I don't really even know how I would choose a rental property, right? And here's a sophisticated guy who's supporting his wife. She's going to start a business so she can work from home and doesn't have to go back to work now that they've had the triplets. And, he's in a field where he makes decent money, but he can't rely on it because it's sales and it does go up and down, right? And he's 100% commission. And then I started asking him, like, well, how does that work with taxes, right? So I'm literally asking questions. He's like, oh, I just get killed. He's like, at least I get some deductions with having the kids. He's like, some of my buddies don't even own a home and don't have their kids, and they don't get any deductions, but I get some. And I start talking to him. I'm like, and of course I tell a story, right? I'm like, yeah, man. I said, my wife and I we'll pay less than 8% tax. And I'm like, I start talking about a rental property, and you could see him he's like, yeah, that's what I want to get to. He's like, when I pay off, I said, you have an opportunity right now where the banks are lending. I said, the economy is strong. The unemployment's low. The market is hot and your value is up right now. I said, if you get a line of credit on your property, you can hold on to that. You don't have to spend it until you learn how to spend it. And he's like, oh, and I didn't even know that. So a lot of people don't even know that if they get a home equity, they think it's a loan. They think they're borrowing against their house and they're gonna have to start paying on this loan, but they're not even familiar with how a home equity line of credit works. And so, this is a grown adult driving a good car with a good job, with a family of 5, right? And didn't quite understand a HELOC. And that's fine. It's because we're not taught about them. They're not the products that banks are selling on a big billboard out in front of their place of business, right? It's not something they market to us. So again, with this desired outcome, I knew exactly what I wanted to eventually get from this guy. So I'm creating enough intrigue by talking about my knowledge on a HELOC. I'm not giving him the information on how he should go down to the bank and get one, but I'm allowing him to believe that the market's good, his value's up, he can get more. And then when the market crashed, and I didn't say the market crashed, I said, do you think the market will go down again? He's like, well, yeah, absolutely in Arizona. We always have that. And I'm like, exactly. I said, right now, do you think the market's up? And he's like, yeah. Our value is probably up to 500,000. When we only bought this house 3 years ago, we only owe like 60,000 on it. And I'm like, you could get a really nice HELOC. I go, imagine if you could learn how to buy. And this is what I plant that imagination, right? So I'm saying, so now I'm solving the problem with a story, right? I'm solving the problem of him not knowing how to do real estate. So I'm like, imagine if I could show you how you could learn to buy a property, right? I said, if you could buy a rental property with your HELOC and the renter's paying down your mortgage. And I said, do you know how much the average rental loses on paper in taxes as a write-off? He's like, yeah. And he knew the word depreciation. He's like, yeah, and you can use depreciation. I'm like, exactly. I go, you can depreciate this asset. And he says, no. I said, yeah, like $8,000 a year. The average rental loses on paper. I said, and you're cash flowing $300 to $400 a month because you bought the property correctly. So you're cash flowing. And I said, your cash flow can pay for your asset, like your car. Your liability, like your car, right? And so you're bringing in income, you're writing off the property management, you're writing off the fix up, you're writing off the interest, your renter's paying for your property, you're depreciating the property, and your mortgage is going down. And you do this all at a time where you're able to buy the property with equity because you bought it in a down market. So imagine if I taught you how to learn how to do that. And all you did now was go out and get the HELOC so that you could learn to do this, and that you sat on the HELOC until the market crashed or until you learned how to do it right. He's like, oh, I never even thought about it. He's like, I'm like, you can go 10 years and it's just like a credit card. I said, if you don't ever use it, you never have to pay. Oh, I didn't even know that. And so now I solved the problem. And I said, listen, why don't you give me information? I'll give you my card. And this is right when we pulled up to the front of the Hard Rock, where I was meeting my buddy to go to the game. And then I'll give you a call. I said, I kind of do these things. I go up at our office. I'm kind of, share with people how to do this. Just like, and what was interesting is during the conversation on the way down there, he was talking about his wife trying to start an online business, and she's like Googling all this stuff. And he even mentioned the book he read, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I even mentioned education. I said, yeah. He's like, she's trying to learn. I said, yeah, education's kind of key, right? He's like, oh yeah. I said, she could pay for, some of these seminars, teach you how to, get your Google up there and use Shopify and all this stuff so you can start to make money and all this. And so we're trying to talk a little bit about it. And I go, a lot of these programs are worth it, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there. He's like, yeah, it's not like a scam. He's like, some of it works and some of it doesn't, but you kind of got to get it, unless you want to try to do it on your own. I go, exactly. And that takes a lot longer, right? So this conversation is not because I care about Shopify or online business. It's not because I wanted to talk about the fact that you can start an online business and that's a good way to go. It was about creating the value of education and learning and how it can expedite things and how there are different programs out there and you got to be careful which ones you work on. And it was all about this other business. But it was on purpose. These questions and these comments I was making, and I even told him a story of one of my students that went out and I didn't say he was my student. I said, one of my buddies went out and bought a program for $2,000 on this Amazon thing. And what it ended up being is they taught him just enough not to be able to do anything. He hasn't done anything with it. He thought he'd be able to make some quick money on it. But then what really came about was that he had to go and spend a whole lot more money in order to make it work. And so I tell this story and then and he's confirming with me, right? He's agreeing with me that education is a key. And so at the end, I'm like, hey, listen, why don't you give me information? I'll give you a call, leave you my card, shoot me a text, and I'll take your, and I grabbed his information really quickly, just his phone number, and I mentioned to him that I share with people a little bit of information up at our office every once in a while, and I'll let them know what's going on. And I just left it at that. I didn't want to talk about Renatus then. I didn't want to talk about real estate education then. I didn't want to talk about any of those things. That was not my goal. My goal was simply to gather his information. And so my thought was just to, what my desired outcome was simply to gather his information, not to have a conversation at all and not to invite at all. That's awkward, in my opinion. I don't know him yet, but I can get to know him more on a conversation. And then I might even have 2 conversations. I might even go get a cup of coffee and talk real estate with the guy before I invite him to an event. But I kind of set the seed there. So I'll see how the conversation goes with him once I talk to him, right? And so that entire conversation was based on a desired outcome. I knew when I ordered Uber that I would have this conversation with the person in the car. It was set in motion before I started. However, it wasn't about what I wanted. What was important was what he wanted, right? And he started the conversation, and I allowed the conversation, and then I broke the ice naturally with the interest in the car. I like fast cars. I like cool cars. I complimented his car, and then naturally he felt the need as a sophisticated adult. He was dressed nicely, right? I paid a little bit more for this lead by paying a little bit more for the Uber ride that I got, but I did it on purpose, right? I chose the Uber on purpose. And that was my goal, was to get that information. And so the choice that I made was that it wasn't going to be about what I wanted. It was going to be about what he wanted. And so it was important that I ask the right questions to find enough information to see if there's any interest in real estate and what solution I can provide for his problem, right? So no matter where the conversation would have gone, even if he was a real estate investor himself, there would have been more questions to figure out how I could get his information so that we could get together and I could introduce him to Renatus, right? So remember, if you guys got any questions, so I just want to share that quick story with you guys. I thought would talk about what the desired outcome. So now that was one with a 3-foot rule. And then if you think about things with your family, for example, warm market, okay? And we talk about desired outcomes. The most important thing is that we have some posture, right? And that we determine what it is that is important to us, and then what we need to do in order to make something happen so that we can get someone in front of the information. And so what I mean by this is we know that if we don't share the information, we can't help us and we can't help them. And we have to remember that. And then we also have to think about, and this is all prior to your conversation, right? This is what I would call even getting in state, right? So if you're ill-prepared and you take a phone call, for example, off of an ad and you're doing something else, it's probably not the best way to go about things, right? If you are, going to an event with a family member or warm market and you're hanging out with a friend or whatever, and it's a situation that's not really conducive to conversations about real estate investing or business ownership or taxes or any of that stuff, then you've got to make sure that you're not having those conversations then. You want to be prepared for whatever it is that you're going to have this conversation. So you want to be able to get into a state that is specifically outcome driven, right? Desired outcome driven, and that you're on purpose for that call. That's why you always hear Michael and the leaders on this call talk about qualifying for the time. Is now a good time to talk? Do you have a couple minutes? And when you're calling more market, we talk about this a lot too. And especially if it's someone you haven't talked to in a little while, you're not there to catch up, because if you're catching up with them first and talking about kids and family and life and all those good things, and then you throw out, hey, what are you doing Thursday? It's deceptive, right? It feels weird and they don't appreciate it. So you want to, when we're having these conversations, when we're setting ourselves up for these conversations and these phone calls, we're getting in a state of mind. I like to come to a place specifically in my office, where I'm going to have a conversation, where I'm going to be ready to ask questions, and I'm going to have a certain amount of time that I expect the call to take, right? I don't want to be on the phone call with a cold market lead who's never seen the information for 20 minutes. I mean, that may be the case with some of you guys, and you might enjoy it, and you might hit it off really well with someone and build rapport, and I'm not going to tell you how to do your business, right? Not at all. Those are your choices. My experience has been the longer I'm on the phone call with somebody, the more information I give. And unfortunately, no matter how well the conversation goes, typically I talk myself right out of a person coming to the event. They're gonna agree with me, they're gonna love me, and then they're gonna say that they're gonna be there, but they never show up. And so I have experienced that over and over and over the years. And I've learned to refine my phone call to 3 to 5 minutes max, and many times a couple of minutes. And so when we're even talking to warm market, when we're hanging out with our friends or family, and it's Thanksgiving or it's a holiday or whatever it is, then there will be times during that time frame when there will be an opportunity to ask some questions, right? And at that time, it's important that you personally, in my opinion, like I get ready for the accomplishment of the desired outcome. And what I mean by that is I get into a state of mind, like I'm preparing myself for how I'm going to drive the conversation. And typically it's not, unless you do it on purpose, it's in a one-on-one situation. It's not in a group setting. I'm not having multiple conversations in the kitchen with everybody when people are having drinks or getting food ready or eating appetizers and talking about daily life. And then strike up a conversation about how business is going at home, or hey, have you ever thought about, working in real estate or working from home or any of those things, right? It's a one-on-one setting. And so I personally am working towards getting in a state of mind where I'm ready to ask the right questions so I can find out what they're looking for and what they need. So back to the conversation. And remember, guys, if you have any questions or thoughts or comments, you can put them up there, and I can answer them in the chat, or you can come off mute. I don't care if you have anything. So back to the conversation with Warm Market and family. I was talking a little bit about posture, right? And I was talking to Alex the other day, and we have to. It's important that when we're getting in this state of mind, that we remember what it is that we know and what it is that we have. Right? And what it is that we can offer. And so we can't offer because we want to offer. We can't share because we want to share. Like we can, right? We do this, but it's simply more about what we want then and less about what they want then. And typically it falls on deaf ears. They will hear you out, but we haven't created an urgency, we haven't created intrigue, and we haven't made it their idea. So I know from talking to my team and even from my own experiences naturally that a lot of times we're like, oh my God, Jimmy has 3 kids. It's my sister, it's my sister, and she has 2 kids, and she lives in Philly, and she's a W-2 job. And I just know she's not benefiting taxes. She owns 1 house. I know she's struggling in retirement, and I know she's gone through ups and downs in her career based on the economy. And I need to get her to own her own business and have a part-time business on the side so she can benefit in tax benefits, and she can have some extra money for retirement, blah, 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 right? And these are all the things that I'm thinking about myself that would be beneficial for her. And if I were to come out and say, Nay, this is, you got to go down to this meeting. I mean, you post on Facebook all the time that you hate your commute. You got an hour commute. You just got your cheese move. You got a promotion, yes, but now you're not working with the team that you developed. And so I start to see these things that she's saying, and so I'm telling her or what I think is important and what I think that she wants to hear and what I think that she needs to see, right? And it's true, and it's not wrong, And perhaps it's even exactly what she wants, but it's not her. It's not about her. It's not from her, and it's not her idea. It's me. It's me telling. It's me assuming, right? And so the conversation may go well, right? And she may even want to go to an event. But because of the way I approached the scenario, because of the way I approached the conversation, and it came from a place of what I feel and what I want and what I think would be important for them, the outcome, the desired outcome isn't accomplished because I told them information instead of them telling me information. I gave them the opportunity instead of them seeking out the opportunity. And I hope that makes sense. And so what I mean by that is, I think the greatest way to get someone to actually show up at an event and actually appreciate a follow-up is to steer the conversation with questions that enables them to make it their idea. And we do that simply by asking what if, or have you ever thought of, right? And then they start to say, yeah, I did think about a second business, but I just haven't found the right thing. And you're like, oh, I totally agree with that, right? Well, what if I can share with you this opportunity by showing you how you can have your own business? Would you want to do that? Well, yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. And so I know that was kind of skewed there, but you get my point, is that by me asking them a question and them answering it and then elaborating on it using one of those power questions, explaining to me a little bit more about what you think about that, it's now become their idea as to why they should get a business, or that they wanted to start a business on the side, or that they want to start saving in taxes. And it's not my idea. And the way to do this is to, in my opinion, really start with that desired outcome. Really start with how you want to have that conversation end up and where you want it to go, instead of playing it by ear and hoping for the best, or trying to, nervously as we do, drop it in there where we can try to fit in how we can bring up Renatus, right? And so each and every time you're going to have a conversation with someone in particular, if you choose that you want to invite them, then the situation, you have to be in the right state of mind, which you have to change your way of thinking for that time being, for that time that you're going to be engaged in that conversation with them. And then you have to choose your desired outcome, what it's going to be, what it is that you want them to tell you, what you want to get from them, right? Selfishly, that's what we're doing this for, right? We're doing this for ourselves and for our own families. And in the meantime, we're in the turnaround, we're helping others do it, but we're doing it for ourselves. But we can't let them know that, right? It doesn't work that way. It has to be what's in it for them. And so we have to remember that we know more than they do. We have to have that posture. We have to know that, this is the best way for me to share with you this information, is for you to see it on Thursday night, or you to come to the property tour, right? I can't explain it to you. And if I did, I wouldn't do it justice, right? So we have to have that posture. We have to stick to our guns when it comes to how we present the information, and it's not over the phone call on the first conversation or the second conversation. And then after that, we have to be able to draw out and use those questions in order to just simply, in a short period of time, let them talk. People love to hear themselves talk, and they love to share with you their situation. They love to share with you their scenario. And the second that you hear it, you write it down and you solve the solution, or you solve the problem. The minute that one thing comes out where they're like, if I just had this, or if I just did it this way, or if I wanted to do this, or they're going to tell us exactly what is missing, exactly what the problem is, exactly where the disconnect is, exactly why they're not where they are. And then we use any one of the scenarios, any one of the education pieces, any one of the classes, any one of the community, any one of the different ways that Renatus provides value, and we provide a solution, and then we invite. And that's how we get that desired outcome. Cool. All right. So that was one of the key things that I wanted to talk about. There I go. I wanted to talk about. I think that helps me to engage in a conversation every single time that I want to, whether it's cold market, warm market, or 3-foot rule. And you guys, like you, trust me when I say I have to practice this all the time, right? Because I don't do it enough. I don't. If I did, I would be on the pack, right? And I'm going there, but I'm not there yet. So yeah, I've got to implement the same practices that I preach all the time. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to be able to teach these calls, to teach my team on Tuesday night, to teach the Scottsdale team on Thursday and Monday night, because it reminds me of what I need to do. It makes me think about how I need to show up all the time for myself and my own team and my own direct sales. I'll talk a little bit. Let's see, I've got 7:47, so I got about 10 minutes or something. And so I've got one more thing we can talk about. Are there any thoughts or questions, you guys? If you have them, you can throw them up in the little chat box there, or raise your hand, or I don't know how that hand thing works, but you can unmute yourself if you want. I believe. I hope I'm saying that properly. I think you can *6 and unmute and then come up if you want. You guys, I'm a real estate investor by trade, right? So I took, as Gerardo said earlier when he introduced me, is that I got involved with Renatus back in the old company because I came off a street sign. Just so you guys know, I came off of Real Estate Investor Seeks Apprentice, and I was literally wanted to learn how to do real estate because I heard about money in real estate, and that is exactly what I was looking for. It was to make a crap ton of money, and so I was mainly interested in the money. In the real estate. And so, I've been able to use the education. In my opinion, fix and flip, like I've said before, is really sexy, and there's a lot of opportunity for making good money, right? And I think that if you think about your own desired outcome with regards to your real estate, depending on where you're at, and many of you on this phone call, you don't need this conversation, or maybe I'm just preaching to the choir, as they say. So bear with me a little bit, and you've already got your systems in place and you're doing some real estate, which is awesome. But I will say, if I had it all over to do it again, and that's why I'm back with Renatus as of 2016, really focusing on the marketing and trying to accomplish some serious marketing goals. I think it's an incredible advantage, and I'll get to that why. But even if you only did a goal of one fix and flip every 6 months, perhaps, and you picked a deal that was a deal at the decade, that wasn't a slim margin or could leave a lot of room for error, and it was a pretty solid deal. Now, of course, you're going to have to do some marketing to find that deal. You're really going to need to get direct to seller. It's going to have to be a good direct to seller situation. Do some negotiating. Perhaps it's a value add property where you're adding value by adding square footage or changing the footprint of the property, or maybe you're maximizing the highest and best use of a certain zoning or something like that. And you're taking 6 to 8 months to do this deal, and you're doing one every once in a while. And that's going to generate a nice, $20, $40, $60, $80,000 profit, which could really benefit anybody in any situation. And you do that every 6 or 8 months, and it's a nice, part-time salary. It's not, 5 or 6 or 8 fix and flips at a time, and running a lot of risk at that time and things like that, and really putting a lot of strain on what it is that your time is trying to convey, because you really want to give yourself time. And so, the marketing, this desired outcome training, that term is not mine. I got that from a guy who's a personal development guy. And over the last 10 years, since I started with Renatus, I've probably spent, my wife and I, about, $25,000 or more on personal development, both books, but also live trainings and different seminars, if you want to call them that, weekend events that we've gone to. for personal development, and that it just is about becoming a better person, right? And so if you choose to develop your person like you already are by being a part of Renatus, and then reading books or listening to some of the audio books, and then you choose to engage fully in the marketing and really commit to it, and set some desired outcomes, can also be, your goals or whatever you want to call them. But if you look at least exploring the option of perhaps trying to build a rental portfolio, maybe doing 1 or 2 fix and flips a year, but making the marketing your main focus, I believe that you will put yourself in a better situation in the future. I'm not saying don't do real estate. Do not get me wrong. But what I'm saying is that if you can use the marketing and you can collect $10,000 checks and you can build a team where they're helping you while they're helping themselves and you're helping them help you, and vice versa, then your education will put you in scenarios, and your community, all of those things combined, will put you in scenarios where you can jump into longer term real estate. And especially, in my opinion, if you can set yourself up, the markets are going to crash. And most of us are in pretty solid markets. If you're in Seattle, if you're in Las Vegas, if you're in California, if you're in Arizona, if you're in Florida, if you're in Atlanta, if you're in Colorado, even these markets are fairly up and down, right? They have a large swing on a 7 to 8 year curve where it goes from up market to down market and back up. And so the market is recovering from what I would call a recession at the very least, but really a depression, right? And so we're now in that upper part of that traditional 8-year curve, a 7.5 year curve. And so the market is set at some point to fall, right? And if it falls 20 to 30%, or even 20%, in most of our markets that I mentioned, that's a significant price, right? If it's Texas or the Midwest or, some of the South, the markets don't, the values of the homes don't increase and decrease as much. There's not that it's not as volatile of a market. So 20% is not that much. But for us in Arizona, for example, a $250,000 house dropping 25%, is $60 plus thousand or more. 30% would be a $75,000 discount, right? And then that property rents like crazy. I mean, people are buying them as a rental right now at that price range. And imagine when you buy them on sale, right? And then we don't even buy retail, no matter what the market's doing. We buy even below market on a crashed market. So we still don't even pay retail when it's already on a discount. And so we create even more equity. And so that's when we set ourselves up. So if you can focus on making extra money, getting your credit up, setting yourself up with lines of credit, talking to your credit card companies that you're working with now and getting extended lines of credit, the banks are giving them out. The banks are doing all the things that we love when they do in an up market, right? They're loose with their money. And so your values in your homes are higher, or your parents' homes, or your siblings' homes. And so when the values are higher, you have a better opportunity to get a home equity line of credit. And again, that home equity line of credit is a savings account for you to have when the market crashes. And so if you can set yourself up by utilizing the marketing, improving your personal development, improving your own personal credit, studying your education, and being prepared for a down market, there is far more money made in a down market than an up market, because then you can truly benefit from all facets of the education and all facets of the real estate market by utilizing the marketing market first. And so that's just a thought. But I truly believe that if you are simply marketing and that's all you do, and you have a very high overhead and you count on marketing, the marketing also, in my opinion, from my experience, also suffers in a down market, right? Not as many people are interested in real estate. Not as many people can get the lines of credit that they need to fund the education, and funding options start to cease. And if funding options cease, so no matter what their desire is, their ability to get home equity lines of credit and things like that to buy the marketing are harder to come by. So the marketing becomes high. So we have to, I totally believe that if you guys on this call can set yourself up with $10,000 checks to reduce overhead, to reduce monthly expenses, to put some money away, to build your credit and do these types of things and set yourself up for the next crash, your education will carry you through, and you will be in a position to set yourself apart for the rest of the time. So that's just my opinion. And that's what I'm doing again for this next market. I was just talking to my realtor, you guys, the other day. In 2009, you guys, I bought a house for $5,000 in Arizona. $5,000 for a house. Now it had a hole in the roof, so don't get me wrong, and it needed some work. But that house today is worth at least 120, maybe even 150 grand. And it probably needed 40 grand worth of work when I bought it. But I wholesaled it. I wholesaled it in 6 or 7 days, and I made 15 grand on it, right? But I look back, and I was so ignorant, but I needed money so badly. I had so much debt, and I was just getting started in this business, right? And I had blinders on. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I can't regret it. I can't do any of those things. But you guys have an opportunity where you can learn from that experience. You know, I looked at some of the houses that I flipped in 2011, 2012, and I go back and look at them. And people that have resold those houses have made more money on those houses than I made when I flipped on them, sometimes double, right? And good for them, right? They lived in them for 2 years and sold them. But my point is, flipping is not always the best strategy, right? And if we can set ourselves up in a position where we're able to take advantage of a market because of everything that Bob and Renatus has offered us in this marketing opportunity, then, and we don't, you know, go spend the money on a bunch of cars, you know, whatever. I'm not telling you how to spend your money, but you know, you don't want to be relying on a sales job to carry you through at $10,000 a month if you can't make a combo sale in a down market at $10,000 a month. So you understand what I'm saying. But man, if you can set yourself up for a down market in real estate, your life will change. Your life will be set up for life. I bought a house that I own for $66,000 and it's worth over 600 now. And I rent that place out for $5,000 a month. And that's not even included in my personal portfolio. I have that with a couple of partners, and it's amazing what opportunities are in for you in a down market. And yeah, so I'll leave with that. It's 7:59, you guys. Just want to share that little tidbit because I think it's super valuable. I always do this, you guys, if you want. Many of you have reached out to me. This is my cell phone number. It's 760-533-3141. I don't know why I didn't do that in the beginning, but you feel free to call me or text me. Yeah, got my information, and I appreciate everybody being on this call. Make it an amazing day. Thank you so much for spending your morning with me. I really look forward to it, and I'm super stoked to talk to you guys all the time. So, Christine, you're welcome. Thank you. And you guys, thanks everybody. Have an amazing day. I'll go ahead and end the meeting. Make it a great day. I'll see you guys on the flip side. Thanks again. Take care. 760-533-3141 is my number. You're welcome, Stuart. You're awesome, brother. I love you, man. You and your wife are absolutely amazing. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.